Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into one of the oldest mysteries shared by every mind that's ever drifted into sleep, the strange, shimmering world of dreams. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each in our own little slice of time. Now feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's gently begin our journey into the dreaming mind together. And if your thoughts start to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let them drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. You close your eyes. The room fades. Your breathing slows until even your own heartbeat seems far away. For a moment, it feels as though nothing is happening, as if the mind has simply switched itself off. But behind those closed eyes, the brain begins to glow like a quiet city at night. Lights flicker across hidden streets of neurons, sending soft electric whispers from one corner of the mind to another. And soon, you're no longer here. You're elsewhere, walking through scenes no one else can see, hearing voices that come from nowhere, living moments that vanish with the dawn. Every night you slip into that hidden world. You might be flying above rooftops, speaking with someone long gone, or trying to reach a door that keeps changing shape. You might even find yourself standing in a place that feels more real than reality itself. Whether or not you remember these journeys, they happen, reliably, quietly, almost every time you sleep. Dreams are not a rare gift. They're a nightly rhythm of human existence shared by every culture, every age, every heartbeat that dares to rest. Long before science tried to explain them, dreams were our oldest teachers. The ancient Egyptians kept dream books filled with symbols and interpretations. The Greeks believed they were messages from the gods, dispatched from Olympus while the world slept. In temples of healing, patients would lie upon sacred stone beds and wait for the god of dreams, Asclepius, to send them visions of cure. And then came Aristotle, one of the first to question whether these midnight messages truly came from the heavens. He wondered instead if they were reflections of waking life, ripples from our thoughts continuing to move even when the body lay still. Centuries later, another philosopher of the mind, Sigmund Freud, turned his gaze inward. To him, dreams were the royal road to the unconscious, the stage where hidden wishes played out in disguise. A generation after Freud, Carl Jung saw something even grander. That dreams weren't merely personal, but part of a deep, shared landscape of symbols connecting all of humanity. A mountain might be a challenge, a river, the passage of time, a stranger's face, some unspoken part of the self. But for all their poetry, these ideas remained in the realm of philosophy and art. For thousands of years, no one truly knew what the brain was doing while it dreamed, only that it was doing something profound. That changed one quiet night in the early 1950s, when a young graduate student named Eugene Aserinsky sat watching his 8-year-old son sleep. Beneath the boy's closed eyelids, something remarkable was happening. His eyes darted back and forth rapidly, as if tracking invisible shapes in the dark. The discovery of this pattern, which would later be known as rapid eye movement or REM, marked the dawn of modern dream science. For the first time, we could see that sleep wasn't a state of stillness, but a dance, a nightly cycle where the body rests but the mind stays active, exploring its own depths. Electrodes placed on the scalp revealed patterns of rhythm and surge, as if the brain were conducting a symphony no one could hear. It was a turning point. Dreams were no longer treated as superstition or secret messages, but as natural processes. A way for the brain to think without being awake. Imagine it. While your body lies safe and still, your brain begins to create whole worlds out of memory and imagination. People appear, places unfold, emotions rise and fade like waves. You might argue with a friend who isn't there, visit a city that never existed, or invent music you'll never write down. In this strange paradox, the mind awake inside the body's sleep, we find one of nature's most beautiful puzzles. To dream is to be both here and not here. You're lying in your bed, and yet you're running through forests, talking with ancestors, or floating above oceans of light. In that state, the line between the real and the imagined vanishes, and consciousness itself takes on a new form. Some scientists describe dreaming as the brain's virtual reality simulator, a space to rehearse, remember, and reimagine the patterns of life. Others see it as the echo of the day's emotions, playing themselves out in the theatre of the mind. And some still wonder if it's something deeper, a way for the self to speak to itself, to heal, to invent, or simply to wander. What we do know is this: dreaming is not a mistake or a side effect. It is part of what the human brain does when it is most at rest, and perhaps most itself. As you breathe in the dark, your mind begins its secret work, sorting, weaving, transforming. And in that quiet process, you may find that the person who wakes in the morning is never quite the same as the one who fell asleep. In the next step of our journey, we'll follow that invisible thread even further, to ask the question that lingers softly at the heart of it all: why do we dream at all? When you close your eyes at night, the world outside slowly dissolves, but another world, quieter, stranger, often more colourful, begins to rise within you. It has no edges, no weight, and yet it feels astonishingly real. You've seen it before, many times, though each time it rearranges itself into new shapes. Sometimes you're flying, sometimes you're late for something that doesn't exist, sometimes you're home, but home is not quite how you remember it. The logic of daylight doesn't hold here. In this inner world, gravity can shift, memories can speak, and the impossible feels as ordinary as breathing. Dreams are older than language. Long before humans wrote or built or named the stars, they dreamed. Across thousands of years and hundreds of cultures, people have described the dream as a sacred place, a realm where ancestors whisper, where the future might briefly be, glimpsed, or where lost loved ones come to visit. The ancient Aboriginal people of Australia spoke of the dream time, an eternal, invisible dimension that lies beneath waking reality, a world that shapes this one and never ends. To them, dreaming wasn't just something that happened in sleep, it was the very fabric of creation, still alive beneath every stone and wind-blown tree. In temples along the Nile, the Egyptians recorded dreams on thin sheets of limestone. Some believed these nighttime visions were messages from Thoth, the god of wisdom, and that to interpret them was to read divine handwriting. In Greece, philosophers began to pull this wonder toward reason. Aristotle suggested that dreams came not from the gods, but from the inner echoes of our senses, that the day's impressions lingered like ripples in a pond, and replayed themselves after we drifted into sleep. It was a small but profound shift, the first step toward understanding dreams as something belonging to the mind rather than the heavens. And yet, for most of history, dreams were still treated as sacred or prophetic. Even now, in the quiet hours before dawn, some part of us may still believe in that magic. When you wake from a dream that feels too vivid to be random, a conversation with someone who's gone, a glimpse of a place you've never seen but recognize instantly, you might feel, just for a moment, that you've touched a secret edge of reality. Perhaps that sense of wonder is itself part of what dreams are meant to preserve, a reminder that not all of our experience fits neatly into logic. Artists and thinkers through the ages have drawn from that same well. Mary Shelley once dreamed of a young scientist who reanimates the dead, and awoke to write Frankenstein. Dmitri Mendeleev saw the periodic table structure in a half-sleeping vision and rushed to write it down before it faded. The melody for Yesterday came to Paul McCartney fully formed one morning, so clear he thought he must have heard it somewhere before. Van Gogh, whose brush captured light as if it were alive, once said, "I dream my painting, and I paint my dream." Perhaps that's what creativity is, the waking mind borrowing from the dreaming one, painting with colours remembered from the night. Science now suggests that this connection between sleep and creativity is not just poetic, but deeply biological. During REM, that vivid stage of sleep discovered in the 1950s, the brain lights up in curious ways. The centres of emotion and imagination are active, while the logical control systems of the prefrontal cortex rest. It's as though the mind loosens its grip, allowing thoughts to drift and mingle freely. The result is a world that feels real, but obeys no rules. In this loosened state, strange connections form, the kind that may later emerge as sudden insights or creative leaps. A scientist might wake with a solution, a composer with a melody, or a painter with a vision they don't remember dreaming. Even children, untouched by theory, know that dreams hold something special. A child might wake, eyes wide, eager to describe a world of glowing animals or floating houses, their voice filled with wonder. They don't yet think to ask why they dream, only what happened inside that secret place. And perhaps that instinct to tell stories of the night is what first taught humans to share imagination. Before we drew on cave walls or wrote myths about gods, we already had a nightly theatre of our own minds, one where we rehearsed fear, courage, and love in the language of symbols. Dreams are also universal in their contradictions. They can be beautiful and terrifying, profound and absurd, filled with meaning or empty of it. You can meet someone you love and watch them turn into a stranger mid-sentence. You can run and never move, fall endlessly, or breathe underwater as if it were air. These paradoxes mirror our waking lives in quieter ways. The uncertainty, the longing, the strange logic of emotion that often guides us more than reason does. In that sense, dreams might not be separate from life at all, but an echo of it, the mind practicing how to be human. Even the most rational among us, those who measure brain waves and map neurons, cannot entirely flatten the mystery of dreaming. The flickering images that play behind our eyelids carry something more than data. They feel felt. They carry emotion, weight, warmth, even humour. They can teach or haunt, comfort or confuse. To dream is to experience the full spectrum of consciousness, just arranged differently, like a familiar song played underwater. Perhaps that's why we remember certain dreams decades later, not because of what they said, but because of how they felt. The childhood nightmare that still makes your chest tighten. The joyful dream of flight that returns every few years like an old friend. The dream of standing on a shoreline that doesn't exist, watching a sea that feels infinite. Each one leaves a trace, not in words or formulas, but in something deeper, something emotional. In the soft space between wakefulness and sleep, the mind becomes both artist and audience. It creates stories not to entertain but to integrate, to weave our memories, fears and desires into something that makes emotional sense, even if it breaks every law of physics. To dream is to practice being alive in the only place where failure carries no consequence. It is the mind's way of playing with reality, sculpting it and learning from it. As we drift further into the story, we'll begin to explore why these nightly worlds exist at all, whether they evolved to help us survive, to teach us empathy, or simply to give the restless mind a place to wander when the body can no longer move. In the quiet hours of night when most of the world lies still, your brain becomes a secret theatre. It hums softly behind the curtain of your skull, projecting stories onto the dark. For most of human history, this hidden performance remained invisible. People could only guess what went on beneath the surface. What invisible forces spun the landscapes and characters of their dreams? But then, little by little, the curtain began to lift. It began with curiosity, that gentle spark that never quite lets go of a question. In the early 20th century, scientists were learning to measure what could not be seen: the rhythm of the heart, the tiny flickers of electricity dancing through nerves. The brain, however, remained largely mysterious. It was an orchestra we could hear only faintly from behind a wall. We could watch a person sleep, but we could not see what the mind was doing as it wandered through its nightly worlds. And then, in 1951, a graduate student named Eugenia Sarinsky made an observation that would quietly transform everything we thought we knew about sleep. While studying his young son one night, he noticed something peculiar. Beneath the child's closed eyelids, the eyes were darting back and forth, as though tracking unseen movement. It wasn't random twitching. It was coordinated, rhythmic, alive. Sarinsky connected the child to a primitive brainwave machine, and what he saw was astonishing. The brain activity looked nearly identical to wakefulness, even though the body was still. That moment, one small pair of eyes flickering in the dark, marked the birth of what we now call REM sleep, the stage where most dreaming takes place. The discovery spread quickly through the scientific world. For the first time, we could measure dreams indirectly, not through their content, but through their fingerprints on the body. When people were awakened during this stage, they almost always reported vivid, emotional, and story-like dreams. When woken from other stages, their minds were blank or scattered. This pattern revealed something profound. Sleep was not a single, uniform state, but a cycle. We drift from light sleep into deep, restorative rest, and then rise again into REM, a repeating rhythm, like waves folding and unfolding on a shore. If you could see a chart of your brain activity through the night, it would look like a gentle tide. Slow waves roll through the mind during deep sleep, washing away the debris of the day, clearing space, repairing tissue, resetting balance. Then, as dawn approaches, the rhythm changes. Those waves quicken and ripple, signalling the return of the REM, the mind's moment to wander freely. It's as if the brain first cleans the house, then decorates it with dreams. Scientists soon discovered that REM wasn't only about imagination, it was essential for the brain's health. Animals deprived of this phase grew anxious, disoriented, even sick. Their emotions frayed, their focus dulled. In humans, a night without REM can leave the world feeling thin and unreal, as though your thoughts are echoing through an empty room. The brain, it seems, needs its nightly theatre not just for storytelling, but for balance. It's the time when emotions are replayed, rearranged and softened, like rewinding a day's film reel and tinting it with calm light. But as scientists dug deeper, they found that even the quietest parts of sleep were busy. During the deep, dreamless stages, slow pulses sweep through the brain, linking distant regions together. It's a kind of nighttime conversation between memory and meaning, where information gathered during the day is quietly refiled. And then, when REM returns, the mind takes all those pieces, the facts, the feelings, the fragments, and begins weaving them into stories. Dreams, in that sense, may be the visible tip of the brain's invisible housekeeping. To explain these findings to patients or students, researchers began using metaphors, gentle ones that fit the rhythm of sleep. They would say, imagine your mind as a library. During deep sleep, the librarians work quietly in the dark, reshelving books, mending torn pages, discarding what's no longer needed. Then, in REM, the lights flicker back on, and the stories come to life again. Characters walking out from the shelves, rearranging themselves into new tales. You might call that creative chaos, or perhaps emotional rehearsal. Either way, it's the mind's way of making sense of what it cannot fully understand while awake. Dream science continued to evolve through the mid-20th century. Electroencephalography, the gentle tracing of brainwaves, became a kind of language through which scientists could listen to the sleeping brain. Each wave told a story, slow waves marking deep restoration, rapid ones signalling imagination and motion. No formulas were needed, the data simply formed patterns, like sheet music written by the mind itself. In laboratories filled with soft blue light, volunteers slept with tiny electrodes on their skin, their dreams transforming into quiet graphs that glowed on paper rolls. And what those graphs revealed was humbling. The dreaming brain is not turned off at all. It is active, alive, almost mischievous. The regions tied to emotion and memory spark to life, while the logic centers rest. It's as if reason steps aside for a few hours to let imagination steer. That balance between chaos and order is what gives dreams their strange coherence. They are not random noise, but neither are they deliberate creations. They exist in the space between, a kind of organized confusion that feels both intimate and surreal. In that sense, the discovery of REM sleep did more than change how we think about dreams. It changed how we think about consciousness itself. If the brain can be so vivid, so alive, so creative while the body lies paralyzed in bed, then wakefulness is not the only form of awareness. There are others, quieter, more fluid, less constrained by physics or fact. The dreaming state is a mirror held up to the waking mind, showing us what it looks like when freed from rules. And as scientists began to explore this mirror more deeply, they realized something even more fascinating. Not all dreams are the same. Some are faint sketches, others full symphonies. Some follow memories, others invent entire worlds. Each one reflects a different balance of the brain's countless networks. Emotion, imagery, memory, sense of self, interacting in unpredictable ways. In that unpredictability lies the wonder of being human. We are not machines running programs in sleep. We are storytellers continuing our stories in another medium. From here, the story opens into the deeper question that all of this points toward. If the dreaming brain is so purposeful, so layered in its activity, then what is that purpose? Why did evolution keep this nightly theatre alive in us when it could so easily have let it fade? Why do we dream, and what hidden work is the mind performing behind those closed eyes? When you dream, you are both the painter and the canvas. The world you walk through is made entirely of you. The light, the sound, the air, the faces. Yet in that moment it feels separate, alive, even unpredictable. You can open a door and find an ocean or fly without remembering how. The impossible obeys its own quiet logic, and somehow you accept it. This is one of the most mysterious aspects of being human. The ability to experience entire worlds that dissolve the instant you open your eyes. To the dreaming mind, there are no boundaries between thought and reality. A memory can become a mountain. A worry can take human form. The fragments of your waking life mix and melt together until emotion becomes geography and feeling becomes architecture. In dreams, joy might look like a sunrise. Anxiety might appear as a long, endless hallway. What you see is what you feel. The dream takes the invisible, your thoughts, your fears, your longings, and turns them into something you can wander through. Modern scientists describe this state as a unique mode of consciousness. Not awake, not unconscious, but something in between. When measured, the brain in REM sleep hums with activity. Regions that create emotion and memory glow brightly, while areas responsible for logic and self-control rest. It's as though your inner storyteller has been given the keys to the entire stage, while the critic takes a nap in the back row. That's why dreams feel vivid yet strange, meaningful yet impossible to explain. They're the mind's improvisations, shaped by emotion rather than reason. But if you were to describe that process more gently, without the language of machines or diagrams, you might say that the dreaming brain is a kind of tide. When we are awake, waves of thought crash constantly against the shore. Decisions, sensations, responsibilities. But when we fall asleep, that tide recedes, pulling everything back into deeper waters. There, under, the surface, the waves swirl and mix. They carry traces of the day, bits of memory and mood, and weave them into new currents. By morning, some of those currents will have changed you, though you may never know how. Every dream is like a whisper from that hidden ocean. Sometimes it's a murmur of reassurance, other times it's a riddle. The science behind those whispers is complex, but the experience of them is simple. We feel. And feeling, after all, is one of the oldest forms of knowing. To dream is to participate in an experiment that nature runs every night. For millions of years, creatures have slept, but only in the human mind did sleep become a place of imagination. Cats twitch their paws in their sleep. Birds flutter their wings as if flying through invisible skies. And even the octopus, that alien of the sea, changes colours while it dreams, flashing patterns that mirror its waking life. In each of them, the same rhythm plays. The quiet body, the active mind, the story unfolding in silence. That continuity tells us something extraordinary. Dreaming isn't an accident. It's an evolved function, one so vital that nearly every complex brain on Earth carries its echo. It might be a form of rehearsal, a way to keep the circuits of perception and emotion polished. Or perhaps it's nature's way of ensuring that even in stillness, life keeps imagining. There's a small, elegant paradox hidden in this. You can be deeply asleep and yet vividly conscious. Not in the ordinary sense of knowing who you are or what time it is, but conscious in the sense of being somewhere. You can see, feel, choose, react. You exist. And that existence, even when it lasts only seconds, challenges our definition of awareness itself. We tend to think of consciousness as a light switch, on when we wake, off when we sleep. But dreams suggest otherwise. They show that consciousness can dim, change colour, bend and fold, like light through water, without ever going out. If we look at it that way, the dream becomes not a distraction from waking life, but a mirror to it. When you dream, you experience what your mind is capable of without the rules of the world holding it in place. You are still yourself, but freer, lighter, sometimes braver. Some people find in their dreams a creativity they never knew they had. Others meet fears that the daylight hides. A few even learn to steer their dreams, to realize they are dreaming, and to explore that space consciously, a topic we'll drift toward soon. But for now, it's enough to know that the simple act of dreaming reveals something profound about what consciousness really is. It is flexible, self-generating, and perhaps endless. To imagine the dreaming mind, think of a small lantern flickering in the dark. The body sleeps, but that light remains, searching gently through memory and possibility. It gathers the day's fragments and strings them into stories, not because it must, but because that's what light does when it encounters darkness. It explores, it illuminates, it plays. In the waking world, we measure, we analyze, we look outward. But dreaming invites us to look inward, not with reason, but with feeling. It reminds us that our inner universe is vast, and that the line between thought and reality is softer than we think. You don't need to understand every mechanism to feel its truth. You only need to remember the texture of a dream, how your heart can race in a place that doesn't exist, how your eyes can tear up over someone who isn't there, how the mind can build entire landscapes out of silence. To scientists, the dream is a natural phenomenon. To poets, it's a gift. To the sleeper, it's both. A nightly reminder that consciousness is not confined to daylight. When you awaken, the dream fades, like mist dissolving in morning air. But something of it remains, a sense of mystery, a faint shimmer of what it means to be. And perhaps that's the true value of dreaming. not what it reveals, but what it teaches us to accept. That not everything has to be logical to be real, that our minds are capable of infinite creativity, even when we are doing nothing at all. From here, our quiet exploration turns toward the question that lingers softly behind every sleeping breath. Why did nature give us this gift at all? What purpose hides inside these luminous inner worlds? And what secret work does the dreaming mind perform while the body lies still? If you've ever awakened from a dream that felt heavy with meaning, one that stayed with you like perfume on your skin, you've probably wondered the same question that has haunted humanity for as long as we've been able to wonder at all. Why do we dream? Why does the brain, after all its work through the day, keep spinning stories long into the night? What purpose could such strange, unpredictable visions possibly serve? That question has been asked for thousands of years, and every age has offered its own answer. The earliest explanations came wrapped in faith and mystery. To the Egyptians, dreams were dispatches from the gods, delivered to the sleeping soul like letters carried on the wind. In their temples, priests recorded them, interpreting each symbol, a snake, a river, a bird in flight, as divine instruction. The Babylonians believed dreams foretold the future, while the Greeks thought they were messages sent by spirits who drifted between worlds. In ancient China, dreamers imagined that sleep allowed the soul to wander free, travelling in visible realms while the body remained behind. And perhaps in a way all of these were correct. They understood in their own language that dreaming was a kind of message, not from heaven, but from within. When philosophers like Aristotle began to study dreams, they approached them with new curiosity. Aristotle proposed that dreams weren't otherworldly at all, but the echo of waking, life, impressions left behind by the senses, replayed and rearranged when the mind turned inward. He imagined the dream as a mirror of the day, the sights, sounds and feelings we experience still rippling faintly inside us long after we fall asleep. Much later, in the early 20th century, Sigmund Freud gave the world a new kind of dream interpretation, one that replaced gods and spirits with desires and fears. To Freud, the dream was a disguised expression of wish fulfillment, a way for the unconscious mind to speak in symbols when the conscious mind could not. The things we denied ourselves by day, freedom, love, power, revenge, found subtle expression in our dreams, cloaked in metaphor. A locked door might stand for a forbidden wish. A journey might symbolize an unspoken longing. In Freud's view, every dream was a negotiation between what we wanted and what we feared to admit we wanted. Carl Jung, who studied alongside Freud before breaking away, took a gentler and more expansive view. To Jung, dreams were not merely the whispers of repressed emotion, but part of a vast psychological ecosystem. He saw them as messages from the deeper self, guiding us toward wholeness. Within them lived symbols that belonged not to one person, but to all of humanity. Archetypes of mother and child, hero and shadow, the wise old man, the endless journey. Dreams, he said, allowed us to meet the parts of ourselves that waking life often ignored. For centuries, these ideas shaped how we thought about the dreaming mind. They gave us vocabulary for the mysterious and comfort in the thought that even chaos had meaning. But they also left many questions unanswered. Why do animals dream? Why do even newborn babies show patterns of REM sleep, their tiny eyes moving beneath the lids as though watching some secret world? Why do we dream so vividly, so emotionally, and yet forget so much of it? When science finally turned its instruments toward the sleeping brain, it began to uncover new answers, some that confirmed old intuitions and some that quietly upended them. What researchers found was that the dream seems to serve not one purpose but many, layered together like the folds of a seashell. One theory suggests that dreams act as a kind of emotional rehearsal. In the safety of sleep, the brain replays the day's struggles, smoothing sharp edges, cooling the heat of conflict. When you dream of something frightening or painful, it may be your mind's way of making peace with it, rerunning the moment in a gentler form until it loses its sting. Another theory, the threat simulation hypothesis, proposes that dreams evolved as survival training. For our ancient ancestors, life was full of danger. The dream, then, might have served as a private classroom where the mind could practice without risk. To be chased in a dream, to confront fear, to find escape routes, all could have been preparation for real challenges. The dream is a kind of mental gymnasium strengthening emotional reflexes. And then there's the social simulation theory, one that feels especially human. Most dreams involve other people. We talk, argue, fall in love, forgive, grieve. Even when those people are inventions of our own mind, they behave with startling independence. Scientists think this nightly social theatre may help us refine our emotional intelligence, to practice reading expressions, sensing intentions, imagining perspectives. In this view, the dream is not just a stage, but a rehearsal for empathy. Each of these explanations touches on a different layer of the same truth, that the dream is a living process, not a random flicker. It's the mind in motion, performing quiet maintenance on itself. To call dreams meaningless would be like calling waves meaningless because they always return to the shore. The rhythm itself is the meaning. And perhaps there is something else, something simpler. We dream because we imagine. The same brain that crafts art and music and language cannot help but create stories, even in sleep. Creativity doesn't stop when consciousness dims, it simply changes form. The theatre goes dark, but the actors remain on stage, improvising to an invisible audience. Across cultures and centuries, this idea has returned again and again, that dreams are the mind's way of thinking in symbols rather than sentences, a kind of emotional language that precedes words. When you wake from a dream and can't quite explain it, it isn't because it made no sense, it's because it spoke in a dialect older than speech. If we follow this thread a little further, we begin to see that perhaps there isn't a single reason for dreaming, but many reasons intertwined. Survival, emotion, creativity, memory, self-understanding. Dreams do not belong to one theory, any more than a sunset belongs to one colour. They are mosaics of meaning, each reflecting a slightly different truth about what it means to be alive and aware. And so, as we drift onward through this exploration, we'll begin to look closer at what the dreaming mind actually does, how it shapes memory, how it blends past and present into new possibilities, and how, in its silent way, it helps us become who we are. When you close your eyes and fall asleep, the world doesn't stop. Somewhere deep within your mind, a stage lights up. The curtains rise on a scene that no one else can see. You might be running, searching, hiding. The air feels tense, the shadows seem alive. It's not random fear, it's rehearsal. Every movement, every emotion, every decision you make inside that dream might be your brain's quiet way of preparing you for the unknown. Long before words or cities or even firelight our ancestors dreamed, they slept in caves, surrounded by predators and darkness. Each night their bodies rested but their minds practiced. To be chased, to fall, to lose the trail and find it again. These were not meaningless fragments of imagination. They were the brain's form of training, a safe place to test reactions without risking life or limb. Inside that fragile, glowing world of sleep, the mind rehearsed survival. Modern scientists call this idea the threat simulation theory, but you don't need to remember the term, just picture it. The dream as a rehearsal ground, a quiet simulation chamber where fear can be explored and tamed. It is the mind's version of a night fire drill. You feel danger, but you wake safe. You run from the lion, but the lion dissolves when morning comes. Yet somehow part of you has learned, not the facts of danger, but the feeling of how to face it. Even now, our dreams often carry echoes of that ancient function. You might dream of falling, of being late, of losing your voice in front of a crowd. Modern life rarely involves predators, but the body doesn't know that. To the mind, embarrassment, loss, and failure can feel as threatening as the growl in the dark once did. So your brain, still wired for survival, turns those emotions into scenarios and lets you practice them safely. It's a kind of emotional vaccine, exposure without harm. But not all danger in dreams comes with fear. Sometimes it comes with connection. Another version of this survival idea, called social simulation, suggests that we dream of others because community too has always been essential to survival. In these inner worlds, we talk, argue, forgive, and protect. We replay faces we know and invent new ones. The mind populates its theatre with cast members, each teaching us how to understand someone else's perspective. Perhaps that's why we dream so vividly of those we love, and sometimes even more vividly of those we've lost. The brain rehearses compassion as much as it rehearses fear. If you think about it, dreaming is the oldest kind of empathy training. In the safety of sleep, you can step into emotional landscapes you might never dare to walk in daylight. You might see through another's eyes or relive an argument until you feel the other side of it. The dream doesn't care about right or wrong. It only wants balance, harmony between feeling and understanding. Inside this mysterious rehearsal, your body remains perfectly still. A gentle paralysis keeps you safe, holding you in place while your mind runs freely. And within that stillness, your heart beats a little faster, your breathing quickens, your eyes dart behind your lids. It's the signature of REM sleep, that vivid stage when imagination takes the wheel. You could think of it as the mind's virtual reality, one crafted not by machines but by emotion and memory. Everything you experience in a dream, the landscapes, the sounds, the warmth of a hand, is built from your own neural patterns, yet it feels entirely real. During this stage, the brain weaves together signals from its oldest and newest regions. The limbic system, that ancient emotional core we share with all mammals, becomes highly active, pulsing like a drum beneath the story. Meanwhile, the logical centers that question, categorize, and judge grow quiet. The result is something paradoxical, a world that feels intensely true, but follows no rule of reason. And through that strange balance, the mind learns. It refines reactions, stretches imagination, and softens the rigid edges of fear. It's almost poetic that in order to feel safe enough to dream, we must surrender all control. When the body relaxes fully, the mind awakens within. Dreams turn a danger into metaphor, chaos into story, survival into art. The very process that once protected us from predators may now protect us from despair, helping us adapt to the emotional wilds of modern life. And so, when you wake from a dream where your heart was pounding, try not to dismiss it as nonsense. That rush of adrenaline was a ghost of ancient training, the echo of a time when survival depended on sensing threat before it arrived. The fear you felt was your brain practicing resilience, sculpting courage while you rested. But dreams do more than rehearse the edge of fear. They also explore the heart of connection. A mother dreaming of her child might unconsciously strengthen the bond between them. A person grieving may dream of their loss and wake with the ache softened just a little. In this sense, dreams are not just a theatre of survival, they are a theatre of healing, a nightly symposium where emotion and empathy perform their endless duet. Even the smallest creatures carry the pattern of this dance. Cats twitch their paws in sleep, chasing prey through invisible fields. Birds sing silently in the dark, their minds flying even while their wings are still. The same rhythm beats inside us. Our species has changed beyond recognition, but the pulse of dreaming, that nightly rehearsal for life, endures. Perhaps that's why we feel a strange satisfaction after certain dreams, even unsettling ones. Some deep part of the mind recognizes that it has completed a lesson. It has tested a possibility, solved a tension, survived a threat. You might never recall the details, but the body remembers the calm that follows, like the silence after a storm. Dreams, then, are the mind's rehearsal room, a space where it can fail without consequence, explore without danger, love without loss. They are a living testament to evolution's creativity, a bridge from the wild to the human. From here, if we follow the thread a little further, we'll see how this inner theatre not only rehearses fear and empathy, but also restores the heart itself, calming the storms of emotion that the day leaves behind. Some nights, dreams arrive like storms. Others, they come like a hush, a low, slow wave washing through the dark. And while you sleep, your body becomes a landscape of quiet repairs. Beneath the skin, the heart beats with measured patience. The breath evens out, and the mind begins its nightly work of balance. The emotions that rush through you in the daylight, the arguments, the laughter, the small anxieties that never quite found a place to rest, begin to drift into the gentle current of dreaming. Inside that current, your brain is far from silent. It hums like a symphony warming up, each instrument adjusting its pitch before the first note is played. Scientists studying sleep have seen how, during the vivid stage of dreaming, certain parts of the brain, the ones that govern feeling, start to glow like coals in a fire. The heart rate changes subtly, sometimes rising, sometimes falling. It's as if your body and your emotions are tuning together, finding a shared rhythm after a day of discord. You can imagine it this way. Every emotion you experience leaves a trace, a bit like sand scattered across a table. By the time you lie down at night, the surface of your mind is cluttered with tiny fragments of the day. Grains of joy, anger, confusion, hope. Then sleep arrives, and a quiet janitor begins to move through the halls of your thoughts. Gently, patiently, it sweeps through the scattered feelings, arranging them into patterns that make sense. This janitor never throws anything away too quickly. It simply softens the edges, lowers the volume, and leaves the floor clear enough for morning light to fall again. In the language of research, this is emotional regulation through REM sleep. But you don't need to remember that phrase. It's simpler to think of it as emotional restoration. Dreaming doesn't erase what you felt, it transforms it. The pain of the day becomes a symbol, the argument becomes a dialogue between strangers, the fear becomes a shadow that fades just before it touches you. Each image is a quiet negotiation between the heart and the mind. Matthew Walker, a neuroscientist who studies sleep, describes this process as overnight therapy. He found that when we dream, a special state unfolds inside the brain, one where the chemicals that cause stress in waking life are temporarily dialed down. It's as though nature designed a built-in system to soothe us. While the mind replays the emotional scenes of the day, it does so in an environment free from the sting of adrenaline. We relive the feeling but not the panic. It's exposure without pain, rehearsal without consequence. Perhaps that's why you can wake after dreaming of something sad and feel strangely peaceful, as if the sadness has already been processed. The mind has done its work. It has taken a jagged memory and sanded it smooth. Even nightmares, which feel so harsh in the moment, often serve this purpose. They are emotional storms that blow through the inner landscape, clearing the air for calm to return. Dreaming is not only a way of processing the heavy emotions, though. It also refreshes joy. Think of how you sometimes wake with a melody in your head or a lingering sense of warmth, even if you can't recall what you dreamed. The emotion remains, stripped of its story. That residue of happiness or relief is evidence of the night's unseen labour, the brain polishing the heart's surface until it gleams again. Inside this nocturnal restoration, the body and mind work together with astonishing grace. The heart rate syncs with breathing, like two dancers moving in slow circles. Electrical rhythms ripple through the brain, carrying signals between regions that rarely speak to one another while awake. It's as if the mind is a vast orchestra that plays only when we're not listening. Each instrument finds its tone again, repairing the harmony that daylight disordered. This quiet process might also explain why sleepless nights can feel like emotional unravelling. When we lose our dreams, we lose our nightly repair. Without that reset, anger lingers longer, worries grow heavier, and small problems begin to feel impossible. Sleep-deprived minds are like orchestras missing their conductor, still capable of sound but lacking balance. A well-rested brain, on the other hand, carries a steadier melody through the day. Dreams help us remember how to feel safely. They teach the heart to step back from chaos and look at it gently. That is why, after a long day of grief or fear, the dream may return to the same scene again and again, as if it's testing different endings, different tones. Each repetition is the mind's attempt at emotional mastery. It's not punishment, it's practice. The brain is learning how to let go. You can sense this if you think about how emotions behave in dreams. Fear may transform into confusion, sadness into tenderness, anxiety into curiosity. Each feeling evolves towards something softer, as though guided by an unseen hand. That's the true miracle of dreaming. Not just that it remembers, but that it repairs. And sometimes the most profound repair happens when nothing happens at all. You drift in the darkness, unaware of any dream, yet your mind is still working, recalibrating, balancing, tending to the inner garden. The next morning you might not know why you feel calmer. You just do. That's the invisible gift of sleep's emotional housekeeping. If dreams are a rehearsal for survival, they are also a refuge for the soul. They allow you to hold what is too heavy to hold while awake. They stretch grief into story, anger into understanding, fear into reflection. Within their soft glow, the day's storms are rewritten in gentler language. So tonight, when you lie down and feel your breath slow, think of the orchestra waiting to tune itself again. Think of the quiet janitor already sweeping the floors of thought. Think of your heart, not as a machine, but as a patient listener, ready to be restored. Sleep is not an escape from emotion. It's the place where emotion learns how to rest. As our path continues, we'll follow this rhythm back through time to see how the dream itself evolved, growing new layers of meaning with every age of life on Earth. If you could look back through the deep ocean of time, far beyond the first humans, you would see creatures sleeping long before they ever dreamed as we do. Fish drifting motionless in the current, reptiles half awake in the sun, birds resting with one eye open, and small mammals curled in burrows, all closing their eyes against the world for a few hours of silence. The story of sleep and of dreaming didn't begin with us. It is far older, a rhythm that nature began writing long before memory itself. Researchers studying animals across species have found a quiet truth. Nearly every brain that sleeps also shows traces of dreaming. In cats and dogs, the eyes move beneath the lids in that same curious dance we call REM. Baby rats twitch as though running through imaginary tunnels. Octopuses, those alien minds of the sea, pulse with changing colours as they rest, their skin flashing patterns of camouflage as if they're rehearsing tomorrow's hunt. The stage of vivid dreaming seems to be written into the language of life itself. The scientist Deirdre Barrett calls this the multi-layered evolution of dreams. Imagine a coral reef growing slowly through ages, each new layer built on the skeleton of the one before it. Dreaming too evolved in layers. In its earliest form, it was likely nothing more than a biological reset, the brain's way of rebalancing chemicals, restoring energy, and keeping its circuits from overheating. A maintenance dream, if you will, where the lights stayed dim and no stories were told. Then, as creatures became more emotional, as mammals developed the limbic systems that pulse with feeling, dreams began to colour themselves with emotion. Fear, comfort, curiosity, attachment, the ingredients of experience that gave meaning to memory. When our distant ancestors curled together at night, their minds began to weave images that matched these feelings. A rustle in the dark might replay as a shadowy figure. Warmth and safety might glow as light or fire. What began as maintenance grew into expression. Later still, as our species evolved, as imagination and language expanded, the dream gained new layers once again. The emotional rehearsal of older mammals merged with the creative mind of humans, producing something entirely new, symbolic storytelling. We began to dream in metaphors. The running became escape from responsibility. The falling became a loss of control. The endless corridor became a life without direction. It was no longer just about fear or repair. The dream had become a tool for reflection, and yet those older layers never vanished. Even now, deep beneath your most complex and colourful dreams, the same primal cycles continue. The chemical balance is still being restored, neurotransmitters still ebbing and flowing like tides under the surface. The emotional circuits still hum and recalibrate. On top of all that, imagination continues to sculpt its landscapes. Every dream you have tonight carries the fingerprints of millions of years, from the first trembling fish to the first human who looked at the stars and wondered. It's humbling to realise that the same process that once kept our ancestors alive in the wild now helps us solve emotional puzzles, compose music, or build stories. The mind's nightly work didn't disappear with progress, it simply adapted. What began as survival evolved into creativity. What began as maintenance evolved into meaning. If you think of your brain as a layered instrument, sleep is the moment when all the layers play together. The oldest rhythms, those deep reptilian pulses that manage heart and breath, form the bass line. Above them, the emotional harmonies of mammals rise and fall. And finally, the melody of human thought threads through it all, weaving logic and memory into song. Every night your mind performs this ancient concert, rehearsing, repairing, and reimagining at once. That's why dreaming feels both personal and universal. When you dream, you're not just creating private stories, you're also echoing the patterns of countless generations before you. A dream of fear is ancient. A dream of love is timeless. Even a dream of flight, that favourite of humankind, might be an echo of the wish for freedom carried in our species for as long as we've looked toward the sky. From an evolutionary view, this layering also makes sense. The brain doesn't discard old designs, it recycles and builds upon them. The structures that process emotion today are the same ones that guided survival in early mammals. Our newer regions, the ones that imagine, plan and create, work hand in hand with those ancient parts. That collaboration between the old and the new is what makes our dreams so vividly strange. A single night can contain both primal panic and poetic beauty, ancient instincts and modern meaning. In some way, dreaming is evolution's autobiography. It carries within it the whole journey of consciousness, from reaction to reflection, from instinct to insight. Every stage of life on Earth has left a trace inside this nightly act. It's as though nature has been refining one idea for 500 million years, that a mind, to truly survive, must also imagine. There's something comforting in that thought. When you drift into sleep, you're participating in one of a life's oldest traditions. The movements of your eyes, the flicker of your heartbeat, the silent stories unfolding behind your closed lids, all of it connects you to every creature that ever paused to rest under the same stars. You are part of a lineage of dreamers stretching back beyond language, beyond species, into the shared rhythm of being alive. So tonight, when you dream, remember that you're both ancient and new. The same biology that once helped your ancestors sense danger now helps you compose meaning. The same neural currents that once flickered in primitive brains now generate poetry, laughter, and art. You are a mosaic of all the minds that came before, a living archive of evolution's imagination. Dreaming grew like coral, layer upon layer, built from the patience of time itself. And now, here you are, resting at the surface of that reef, breathing quietly in the dark while the currents of history still move beneath you. What began as maintenance became reflection. What began as survival became self-awareness. From here, the story deepens. We will leave behind the evolutionary ocean and dive inward to explore how the modern human mind uses dreams not just to survive, but to remember, to file its memories, to strengthen what it loves, and to let go of what it no longer needs. You might think that when you drift into sleep, the mind simply shuts off, that rest is a kind of nothingness, a pause between one day and the next. But if you could peer inside your brain while you sleep, you'd see that rest is anything but idle. It's more like the closing of a library for the night. The lights dim, the doors are locked. Yet inside, a quiet flurry of motion begins. The librarians of your mind step out from the shadows, gathering the loose pages of the day, every sound you heard, every face you saw, every word that brushed past your thoughts, and begin the patient task of sorting. Each night, your brain quietly refiles your life. What mattered most rises to the top, and what's unneeded gently drifts away. It's a graceful process, like waves reshaping the sand, and it happens in patterns, rhythms as steady as the tides. Scientists once thought sleep was uniform, but it isn't. It moves through cycles, each with its own purpose. In the early part of the night, you fall into deep, slow sleep. The kind that sinks you beyond dreaming, where the pulse slows and the body repairs itself. This phase is sometimes called slow wave sleep, though we can think of it more simply as the calm ocean. Long, steady waves rolling across the mind. Later in the night, those waves grow smaller and quicker. The stillness gives way to flickers of light behind the eyes, the vivid world of dreaming. In that stage, the currents of memory and imagination swirl together like eddies in a river, pulling fragments of thought into new combinations. The two stages, the slow and the vivid, take turns all night long, like two dancers in conversation. One cleans, the other creates. One restores, the other rehearses. This gentle alternation is what allows the mind to learn. While you sleep, new experiences are replayed, reinforced, and woven into the larger fabric of memory. When you study a new skill, or read something that stirs your curiosity, your brain marks it quietly. A soft bookmark placed in the margin of your mind. Then, as you rest, that mark glows faintly, drawing the attention of the night's librarians. The information is reactivated, whispered from one region of the brain to another, transferred from short-term holding to long-term storage. By morning you might not remember studying harder, but you'll find that understanding has settled a little deeper, as though folded neatly into place. This refiling process is astonishingly complex yet beautifully natural. There are no symbols or equations needed to describe it. You can imagine it as a kind of housekeeping of thought. In the deep, slow phases, memories are gathered and tested for stability. Do we need this? Does this fit? Then, in the dream-rich stages, the emotional colour of each memory is rebalanced. That's why a painful moment might feel less sharp the next morning, or why a new idea might feel clearer after you sleep on it. Sleep doesn't just preserve information, it refines it, softening what's too harsh and brightening what's too dim. Inside the sleeping brain, a dialogue takes place between two great libraries. The hippocampus, where new experiences are stored like fresh pages, and the neocortex, where the vast archives of long-term knowledge are kept. The hippocampus whispers its discoveries from the day, while the cortex listens and replies, weaving each detail into the greater story of who you are. This conversation happens in slow waves, gentle electrical ripples travelling across the brain like a sea breeze. If you could translate those waves into sound, they'd form a steady lullaby, humming beneath your dreams. Each phase of sleep has its part to play. In the deep stage, the brain strengthens the connections that matter most, securing the memories that will shape your identity. In the lighter, dream-filled stage, those same memories are stretched, reshuffled, and connected to others, sparking creative associations. That's why ideas often feel more fluid after rest. The mind that wakes is never the same as the one that lay down. It has quietly reorganized itself, pruning what's unnecessary and planting what's new. It's tempting to imagine this process as mechanical, like data being transferred from one folder to another. But that image misses the poetry of what's really happening. Sleep is not a machine, it's a garden. Each night, the mind becomes soil again, loosened and enriched, ready to absorb what it has gathered. Dreams are the rain that falls softly over it, helping new thoughts take root. Without this nightly cultivation, our memories would be fragile, our learning brittle, our emotions tangled. Perhaps that's why sleep deprivation feels so strange. Not just tiring, but hollow. The mind deprived of rest forgets how to feel, how to focus, how to hope. Without that nightly rebalancing, everything grows tangled. But when you sleep well, it's as if someone has gone through the garden of your mind, gently lifting the leaves, pulling the weeds, and letting the sunlight in again. It's also worth remembering that not every memory is meant to stay. Some are quietly erased, washed away by those slow inner waves. Forgetting, it turns out, is not a flaw but a form of wisdom. The brain, like a careful editor, knows that the story can only move forward when unnecessary pages are left behind. This too is part of the secret work of sleep, to choose what deserves to remain. When morning comes, you awaken not just rested, but reassembled. Your mind feels lighter, sharper, more open to wonder. The dreams may have faded, the details forgotten, but their work remains. The brain has done in darkness what daylight cannot do. It has made sense of you. As we drift further into this exploration, we'll listen more closely to that dialogue within the dreaming mind, to the subtle cues it hears, the whispers that guide memory, and the strange way it can learn even while we sleep. Sometimes, while you sleep, the world outside doesn't completely disappear. A distant sound, a faint scent, a changeless light, all can find their way through the quiet gates of your dreaming mind. You might think you're cut off from the world, sealed inside darkness, but the truth is softer. Your mind keeps one small ear open, listening, not for danger, but for meaning. Imagine this. You spent the day learning to play a simple song on the piano. As night falls, you hum the tune to yourself before drifting into sleep. Hours later, while you lie dreaming, someone softly plays that same melody in another room. Your sleeping mind, though unaware, hears it. Deep inside, it responds, replaying the pattern, strengthening it, folding it more securely into memory. When morning comes, your fingers find the notes with surprising ease. You didn't practice while awake, yet the skill has quietly deepened. This is the delicate art of what scientists call targeted memory reactivation, but we can think of it more gently as the whispering of reminders in sleep. The idea seems magical, but it is simply the brain doing what it does best, listening. Even in the slow, deep stages of sleep, when consciousness has sunk like a stone into calm waters, the mind remains receptive to subtle cues, like ripples reaching through the lake's surface. A sound, a smell, a small touch can stir the currents below without waking you. In laboratories, researchers have used these faint signals to remind the sleeping brain of things it learned hours before. The position of objects on a screen, a sequence of sounds, even the names that belong to faces. It works best when the cue is gentle, a soft tone, a familiar scent, not strong enough to wake, but strong enough to nudge the memory back into motion. The result is that learning improves, as though the memory has been rehearsed overnight. To describe this without charts or numbers, imagine the mind as a library where certain books glow faintly, the new ones you read that day. During deep sleep, those books rest on a special table awaiting reshelving. Now imagine someone entering quietly and running a finger along the cover, whispering the title. The book stirs, remembering itself, and the librarian gently places it in the perfect spot. That is what a soft cue does to your brain. It calls a memory by name so the mind can store it properly. In daily life, these cues can come naturally. The faint smell of rain might summon the memory of walking home from school. The rhythm of a familiar song might bring back a face you haven't thought of in years. When you sleep, the same principle continues. Only now the process is quiet, automatic, and deeply creative. Your brain builds associations between what it hears and what it felt, blending them into new connections that shape the way you think. Every small sound becomes a note in the symphony of memory. There's something almost poetic about the fragility of this exchange. It works only when the signal is soft enough not to wake you. Too loud, and the spell breaks. Too quiet, and it fades away. It must arrive like a whisper inside a cathedral, barely touching the air, yet enough to stir the silence. That's the beauty of the sleeping mind. It exists in this threshold state, both open and closed, alert and dreaming. It is not unconscious. It is listening, translating the world into a slower language. You may have experienced a simpler version of this yourself. Perhaps you've dreamt that your alarm clock had become part of the story, a bell ringing in the distance of your dream world. Or maybe a passing siren became a note of music in a dream that made no sense until you woke. The brain doesn't simply hear a sound. It weaves it in, turning it into part of the narrative. The outer world and the inner world meet, if only for a moment. There's also another side to this whispering: emotion. When a familiar song plays during sleep, it doesn't just reactivate a melody, it reawakens the feeling attached to it. Memory and emotion are stored side by side like two pages of the same book. When one is opened, the other comes alive. That's why music can stir memories we thought were lost, and why dreams can carry emotions we can't quite name. Each cue in sleep is not just information, it's an invitation for feeling to rise again, to be examined, softened, and refiled. In one experiment, researchers paired the scent of roses with learning a new task, and then released the same scent during deep sleep. The next day, participants performed better, as though the brain had taken the aroma as a signal to review the lesson. The scent didn't have to be strong, it just had to be familiar. It acted like a gentle tap on the shoulder saying, "Remember this." Your mind may not consciously recall such moments, but your memory does. The night is full of these invisible gestures, small reminders that echo across the boundaries of awareness. If we think about it beyond science, there's a quiet comfort in knowing that our minds are never completely alone, even in sleep. They're still listening to the world, the wind moving through a window crack, the hum of the fridge, the breath of someone nearby. These sounds become part of the fabric of your rest. They tell your dreaming brain that you are safe enough to keep sleeping, that life continues softly around you. Dreaming, then, is not a closing off from reality, but a reinterpreting of it. The waking world fades, but traces of it remain, woven through the dream like threads of light through fabric. Your mind doesn't need complete silence to rest. It only needs gentleness. And in this gentleness, learning deepens. Memories root themselves more firmly. Skills become smoother. It's as if your mind has a secret study partner who works quietly through the night, reminding you of what you love, what you've learned, and what you hope to remember. By morning, you wake with a mind slightly changed, not because of some mechanical formula, but because the sleeping brain has danced with the world in whispers. It has chosen what to keep, what to release, what to feel again. It has done what it always does best: turn experience into understanding, noise into memory, and the faintest sound into a song. From here, our exploration drifts naturally to a quieter mystery, one that hides in the space between remembering and forgetting. Why do some dreams vanish the instant we wake, while others linger like perfume on the air? And could forgetting too be a kind of wisdom? Every morning, something beautiful and strange happens. You wake, open your eyes, and the dream you were living in just moments ago begins to slip away. Its colours fade, its edges dissolve, its story, so vivid only seconds before, becomes fragile, then vanishes entirely. You might try to hold on to it to catch even a few threads, but the harder you grasp, the faster it falls apart. Forgetting dreams feels almost unfair. After all, they were yours. You built them, you lived inside them, and yet they disappear like mist. But perhaps forgetting is not a failure. Perhaps it's design. Inside the sleeping brain, memory isn't simply stored, it's sculpted. Some experiences are kept, carved into lasting patterns, while others are gently released. The mind cannot keep everything it touches. There isn't enough space, and there isn't enough need. Forgetting, then, is the brain's quiet act of mercy, a way of clearing the path so that new thoughts, new feelings, new experiences can bloom. You can think of it as the architecture of forgetting, a structure built not of loss, but of balance. Imagine your memories as a vast garden. Every day, new seeds fall. Conversations, faces, moments, sensations. If the gardener never pruned or cleared, the space would grow wild and tangled. The flowers would choke beneath the weeds. But each night, as you sleep, the gardener returns. She moves through the paths of your mind, deciding what stays and what goes. Some flowers are watered, strengthened, allowed to grow deep roots. Others are gently trimmed or left to fade. Their nutrients return to the soil of experience. Forgetting isn't destruction, it's renewal. Neuroscientists sometimes describe this process in terms of connection. Synapses between neurons strengthening or weakening depending on how often they're used. But we can think of it in softer terms. When you revisit a memory by thought, emotion, or repetition, it brightens, asking to stay. When you ignore it, it dims, drifting back into the dark. During sleep, this balancing act continues. The mind quietly reviews its library, asking, does this still serve me? Does it belong in the story I am becoming? Much of this occurs in the gentle dialogue between two great centres of memory. One, deep within, holds the freshest impressions, the hippocampus, the quick notebook of experience. The other, spread across the outer layers of the brain, is the archive, the long-term library where knowledge settles and matures. While you sleep, these two parts converse. The notebook shares its notes, and the archive decides what to keep. The rest is released, like letters burned after they've been read. That's why forgetting dreams might be not an accident, but a necessity. Dreaming, after all, is a place for experimentation. In that space, the mind tests emotions, rearranges events, runs simulations of what-ifs and might-have-beens. If we remembered every variation of every dream, our waking lives would be overwhelmed by infinite alternate versions of ourselves. Forgetting keeps us anchored to one thread of reality. There's also an emotional kindness in this design. Some dreams are unsettling, anxious rehearsals, shadowed memories, symbols we're not ready to confront. Letting them fade protects us. The mind does the work for us while we sleep, then leaves only what's needed for understanding. You might not remember the dream, but you'll feel its effect. A subtle calm, a shift in perspective, a lighter heart. The dream's message has been delivered, even if the letter has been burned. You might recall a fragment instead, a colour, a place, a person who smiled and vanished. These fragments are like petals left behind, reminders of the work the night has done. They're not meant to be studied, they're meant to be felt, a lingering peace, a sense that something has settled. And yet some dreams do stay, the ones bound tightly to emotion, to love or loss or awe. Those carve themselves deeply. They linger because they're connected to feeling, and emotion is the glue that fixes memory in place. The mind prioritizes what moves the heart. That's why the dream of someone you miss can last a lifetime, while 1,000 others disappear before breakfast. The brain, it seems, knows what to keep. So forgetting is not a flaw, it's the mind's art of editing. Like a sculptor removing stone to reveal form, the brain shapes memory by removing what obscures. It prunes, distills, refines. In doing so, it gives shape to identity. Without forgetting, we would drown in the sheer volume of what we've lived. The ability to let go is what allows us to continue, and perhaps this isn't just biological, it's philosophical. To forget is to forgive. To forget is to move forward. It is how we make peace with the impermanence of experience. We cannot hold every dream, every moment, every heartbreak, and still remain light enough to live. Forgetting gives us buoyancy. It keeps the heart uncluttered. There is also a tender symmetry in this. The same process that erases most dreams also keeps the rest of memory healthy. It's the same gardener tending both the flowers and the soil. You might wake remembering nothing, but you'll still feel the garden's care. The morning's clarity, the soft steadiness of mood, the sense of being quietly restored. All of that is evidence that the pruning was done with love. When you next wake with only fragments, half a sentence, a colour, a fading face, don't reach too hard to hold it. Let it go. It has already done its work. The forgetting is not the end of the dream's purpose. It is the completion of it. What you keep is not the image, but the balance it restored. There's a small comfort in that, isn't there? To know that even what fades from memory has served a purpose, and that the mind, in its mysterious kindness, removes only what you no longer need. Forgetting, in the end, is not absence but design. It is how we begin again, every morning, with a mind light enough to carry the day. And as we drift onward, we'll see how not all memories fade. Some remain, carefully woven into the fabric of future dreams. The mind, ever the storyteller, uses these surviving threads to shape what comes next, turning fragments of the past into new worlds of meaning. Sometimes, it's not you who remembers the dream, it's the dream that remembers you. It waits patiently somewhere beneath waking thought, like a note written in invisible ink, waiting for the right warmth of experience to make it reappear. You might be walking down a quiet street, or listening to the rhythm of a train, and suddenly feel it. That strange familiarity, the echo of a scene you once dreamed but forgot. The mind has many ways of revisiting itself, and dreams are one of them. While so many dreams fade each morning, a few remain. They come back again and again, sometimes unchanged, sometimes retold in new shapes. Perhaps it's the same house with different rooms, the same face with new emotions, the same place under shifting skies. These are the dreams that leave footprints. They show us that memory in sleep isn't erased, it's transformed. It doesn't vanish, it becomes something else. Science tells us that when an experience is loaded with emotion, it leaves a deeper mark in the brain. The pathways of feeling and remembering share the same quiet corridors. When the heart stirs strongly, the mind listens closely. That's why a dream that frightens, delights, or comforts you can stay for decades. The memory is pinned not by logic, but by feeling. In the architecture of the brain, emotion is the ink that refuses to fade. But even this explanation doesn't capture the full magic of it. A dream remembered for years is not the same as the one you first had. Every time you recall it, you reshape it slightly, repainting its colours, altering its light. The memory of the dream becomes another dream, one created in waking life. What you remember is both truth and story. The mind, after all, is a storyteller, even when it sleeps. Think of the dreams that return to you like seasons. They evolve as you do. A nightmare that once terrified you might reappear later as something gentler, almost forgiving. A dream of running might shift into one of walking peacefully through the same path. The symbols adjust as your heart does. The dream changes to match the person you're becoming, as though it's learning with you. Some researchers suggest that dreaming helps the brain integrate memory across time, blending past experiences with future imagination. The mind takes fragments of your history and threads them into possible futures, testing them in advance. It's as if the dream is asking, what if, and what next? When you dream of a conversation you've never had or a place you've never been, you're not just replaying memory, you're composing potential reality. The dream remembers what you've lived, but it also rehearses what you haven't yet done. You can picture the process as weaving. Each night, the mind gathers fibres from different parts of your life. Yesterday's conversation, an old memory, an unrealised wish, and begins to braid them together. The resulting fabric may look strange when you wake, with patterns that don't seem to fit. But beneath that odd arrangement lies order. Dreams are not random. They are the loom that connects emotion to understanding. Sometimes a recurring symbol is a form of remembering, a door that never opens, a child you keep losing in a crowd, a long road you can never quite finish walking. These are the mind's metaphors, not riddles to decode, but reflections to feel. The door may not be about one event, it may be about all the times you've waited for change. The child may represent not a person, but a part of yourself you've neglected. Dreams speak in emotional shorthand. They are letters written in a language that only the heart can translate. There's a quiet beauty in how inclusive the dreaming mind is. It doesn't discard the past, it repurposes it. The same memory might appear again and again in different disguises, teaching a new lesson each time. It's not unlike music, where a melody can return in a new key and still be recognized. The mind uses the same notes, the same people, places, fears, to compose new harmonies. Dreams also have a way of connecting you to others. Many people report dreaming of loved ones long gone, conversations that feel real, gestures that carry warmth, reunions that heal something wordless. Whether you interpret these as memory, imagination, or something beyond science doesn't really matter. What matters is the feeling of continuity, that love, once experienced, is stored so deeply that even sleep can't dissolve it. The dream becomes a place where memory and longing meet halfway, unbound by time. This emotional continuity may also explain why certain creative insights arrive through dreams. The same process that recombines memories can link ideas that never met before. The chemist who saw molecules form in a dream, the composer who heard a melody before waking, the artist who painted what their subconscious revealed. All were guided by that unseen weaving. Their dreams remembered them too, remembered what they were seeking, what they cared about, what questions remained unanswered, and offered quiet responses in the language of images. If you've ever woken with the sense that a dream was trying to tell you something, that feeling isn't wrong. It's not a message from outside, it's recognition from within. The dream is you remembering yourself. The science behind it can sound complex. Words like memory consolidation, reactivation, network integration. But the essence is simple. The brain is trying to make your life coherent. It wants your experiences, old and new, to fit together in meaning. Sleep is its time to edit and compose, to turn the fragments of days into the story of a lifetime. You might never know which dream tonight will become part of that story. Perhaps it will fade by morning, or perhaps years from now, you'll find yourself in a moment of déjà vu, sensing that you've been here before. And maybe you have, not in the physical world, but in the quiet rehearsal hall of your dreaming mind. So when you dream tonight, think of it not as forgetting the day, but as remembering the whole of yourself. The dream may not stay in words or pictures, but its essence remains. It settles into your thoughts, into your choices, into the way you move through the world. The dream remembers you, your fears, your hopes, your small wonders, and folds them gently into the tapestry of who you are. And as the tapestry grows, it becomes something extraordinary, a life that continues to evolve even while you sleep. From here, our quiet journey begins to shift from remembering to creating, from how the dream organizes the past to how it inspires the future. There's a peculiar feeling that sometimes arrives in the middle of the night when you're already far from waking life. You're moving through a scene, maybe walking through a familiar street or standing in a house that doesn't quite exist, and suddenly something clicks. The colours seem brighter, the air thicker, every detail humming with quiet awareness. You take a step and realise it doesn't feel quite like walking. You look at your hands and they shimmer at the edges. Then the thought arrives, gentle but electric. I'm dreaming. It's not shock, not fear, just a kind of wonder, like finding yourself inside a painting and knowing you can touch the brushstrokes. The discovery is often followed by stillness. The world seems to pause for a heartbeat, as if the dream itself is looking back at you, surprised to be seen, and then it continues, softer, slower, as if waiting for you to take the lead. This experience is called lucid dreaming, though the term sounds more technical than it feels. In truth, it's something delicate, an awakening inside the dream, the moment your awareness flickers on but your body remains asleep. You're both the observer and the participant, the sleeper and the storyteller. The boundaries blur. For some, lucidity comes by accident. For others, it begins through a practice, a habit of gently asking throughout the day, am I awake? The question becomes a thread that carries into sleep. When it appears inside the dream, it lights up the darkness like a match in a cavern. Awareness ignites, and suddenly you see. At first, lucidity can be fragile. The realization alone may wake you. The excitement of discovery, the quickening heartbeat, the rush of recognition can pull you back to waking life before you have time to explore. But with calm, with patience, the balance can be maintained. You learn to breathe inside the dream, to let the strange gravity hold you without fear. You learn that control is not the goal, stability is. The dream responds best to curiosity, not command. People often describe this moment as if reality itself deepens. The colours glow from within rather than from without. The air carries a density, a warmth, as though filled with invisible light. Sounds arrive with impossible clarity, distant waves, whispered conversations, the faint hum of something cosmic. It's not more real than waking life, just more present. You become aware not only of the world around you, but of the extraordinary fact that you are aware at all. In this state, the ordinary laws of physics seem to soften, like ice melting into water. You can lift from the ground, float through walls, walk across oceans of mist. You can speak aloud and hear your voice echo from the edges of imagination. The mind, no longer bound by the weight of the world, plays. It sketches with light instead of logic. Yet even within the wildest possibilities, the feeling of clarity remains. Not chaos, but coherence, as if some part of you is guiding the dream from within the dream. Lucid dreamers throughout history have described this with awe. The philosopher Aristotle wrote about recognizing the difference between sleep and waking while still dreaming. Tibetan monks developed entire spiritual practices around it, teaching that awareness could be cultivated even in dreams. a way to train the mind toward enlightenment. Modern dreamers describe it more simply. The moment you realize you're dreaming feels like meeting yourself in another language. Scientists, ever curious, have tried to measure what happens in that moment. They've seen how, during a lucid dream, the parts of the brain responsible for self-awareness flicker awake, while the rest of the body remains in the tranquil paralysis of REM sleep. But that's only the mechanical description. What it feels like, the human side of it, is far more beautiful. It's the sudden presence of thought in the middle of imagination. It's the meeting point between consciousness and creation. Many people who experience lucidity use it not to escape, but to explore. They talk with dream characters, ask questions, seek understanding. Some find guidance, others encounter humour or wisdom that feels larger than themselves. It's as if the deeper mind, usually hidden beneath waking chatter, is finally given a voice, and it speaks not in words, but in the vivid poetry of image. Lucid dreams can also be places of healing. People who suffer from recurring nightmares sometimes learn to recognize the dream as it begins and gently change its direction. They can turn and face the darkness instead of running from it, and in doing so, dissolve its power. This too is a form of lucidity, not just knowing you're dreaming, but knowing that fear itself can be transformed into understanding. To imagine this more softly, think of the dream as a mirror made of water. Most nights we fall through its surface without noticing, swept away by the current of images. But once in a while, we catch our reflection and realize that the water is both the mirror and the self. Awareness ripples outward, and the dream shimmers differently, more alive. You have not escaped the dream, you have joined it consciously. There is also something humbling about lucidity. Even when you become aware, you're still subject to the dream's rhythm. It can change without warning, pull you into new scenes, erase the rules you thought you understood. You are co-creator, not master. The mind's imagination is vast and ancient. We only touch its surface. To be lucid is to witness that depth and feel awe, to see how vast your own inner world truly is. You might wake from such a dream with a quiet afterglow, as if part of you is still awake inside it. The feeling lingers, a clarity, a softness, a strange gratitude. You carry it into the day, seeing colours a little brighter, noticing the texture of life with more wonder. Lucid dreaming doesn't change reality, it changes the way you see it. And when night comes again, perhaps you'll find yourself back at that threshold, the moment when the world inside your mind opens its eyes and looks back at you. Awareness flickers, the air thickens, the dream smiles, and once more, you recognize yourself, not just the waking you, but the dreaming one as well. From here, our quiet journey will drift toward an even deeper experiment. What happens when the dream begins to answer back, when science finds a way to speak to the sleeper inside the dream and the sleeper replies? Imagine this. You're inside a dream, aware that you're dreaming, floating through a place that feels both endless and familiar. You look up, maybe at a sky that's not quite a sky, or at a sun that glows like thought itself, and somewhere far away, a voice asks you a question. "Can you hear me?" it says. The strange thing is, you can, you understand. You try to respond. You move your eyes left, then right, in a quiet rhythm, and in a lab somewhere, a scientist watching your sleeping face smiles. You've just answered from within a dream. That's not science fiction. It's something that has already happened. In the past few years, researchers across the world, from France to Germany to the United States, have managed to hold short, fleeting conversations with people while they were dreaming. They trained lucid dreamers to send simple signals from within their dreams, moving their eyes in patterns, flexing tiny facial muscles, even changing their breathing. Each movement became a kind of code. When the scientists asked yes or no questions, the dreamers responded, from inside their sleeping minds without ever waking. It's one of the most delicate experiments ever attempted because the bridge between wake and dream is made of gossamer. The slightest tug, a sound too sharp, a voice too loud, and it snaps. The dreamer wakes, the world dissolves, and the conversation is lost. But when it works, when that fragile connection holds, it feels almost miraculous. Proof that two worlds can overlap for a heartbeat, that consciousness can reach across its own boundaries. To describe it technically would be to drain it of wonder, so let's imagine it differently. Picture a diver deep below the surface of the sea, exploring a world of glowing reefs and slow, drifting creatures. Above the water, another person stands on a boat, holding a line that connects them. When the diver tugs twice, the person above knows they're safe. When they tug once, they're signalling something's wrong. Now imagine the same, except the diver is your dreaming mind, and the person above is your waking one. Those tiny flickers of muscle, those subtle movements, are the tugs on the line, messages sent through the current between two realities. During one experiment, dreamers were asked simple math questions. Things like, what is 8 minus 6? Inside the dream, they saw the numbers float before them like glowing shapes, and they moved their eyes twice to signal 2. When they woke, many couldn't remember answering. Some even doubted it had happened at all until researchers showed them the recordings. The mind had managed to respond consciously, but the memory of that consciousness had evaporated with the dream. It was a paradox of lucidity. Awake inside the dream, yet asleep to the memory of being awake. There's something poetic about that. It suggests that the dreaming mind is a deep ocean of awareness with layers we rarely touch. We surface each morning with fragments, believing we've explored its depths, when in truth we've barely left the shore. These experiments hint that a part of us stays awake even in our deepest sleep, a quiet sentinel of selfhood, capable of hearing, thinking, responding, and then returning to silence. Scientists believe this might one day help us study consciousness itself, to map how awareness flickers in and out, not as an on and off switch, but as a gradient, like the dimming of a lantern. But even without the science, there's something profoundly human about this discovery. It shows that communication isn't limited to words or waking. Awareness can find a way to speak even through dreams. Imagine being that dreamer lying in a lab with sensors on your skin, the hum of machines blending with the hum of sleep. You hear a voice, but it sounds distant, almost underwater. You know you're dreaming. Maybe you're standing in a vast field, the air thick with light, and you decide to try. You move your eyes, the tiniest movement, and somewhere, someone waiting for that signal sees it. You've reached across the veil. You've proven, if only for a moment, that the mind's world and the outer world can touch. There's a quiet wonder in how simple the communication was, yes or no, left or right, yet how immense its meaning. For centuries, dreams have been thought of as sealed spaces, private worlds into which no one else could follow. Now, for the first time, the wall has a window. Not a door, not a way to control or intrude, but a small, shining pane through which we can glimpse the sleeping self still thinking, still aware. Of course, there are mysteries left unsolved. Why do some lucid dreamers remember their answers while others don't? Why do some respond clearly while others hear nothing at all? Perhaps it's because awareness in dreams is fragile, a candle that flares for seconds before wind takes it. Or perhaps the dreaming mind, in its wisdom, protects its privacy, allowing just enough communication to tease understanding, but not enough to break the spell. What's certain is that this discovery changes how we think of dreaming. It's no longer a purely private phenomenon, nor an unreachable world. It's a bridge between the conscious and the subconscious, a threshold where language begins to form, but doesn't yet solidify. You could say that in dreams, we've found a new dialect of the human mind, one spoken in blinks, breaths, and subtle gestures. It also reminds us that even in the deepest sleep, the brain never truly disconnects. It listens to whispers, it responds to tone. It's like a lighthouse keeper who dozes but keeps the lamp burning. Somewhere within you, a light of awareness flickers, steady enough to guide you through the night, even when you don't realize it. There's humility in that image. It suggests that consciousness is not confined to wakefulness. It's a continuous thread, weaving through sleep and dream and memory. Each time you wake, you rejoin that thread, picking up where your dreaming self left off, whether you remember it or not. So tonight, if you dream and feel that small awakening, that realization that you're both dreamer and observer, take a moment to listen. Perhaps the world outside is listening too. Somewhere, a question might be waiting, and in your quiet way, without words or movement, you might already be answering. As we drift onward, our path will lead us deeper into the strange company of the dreaming mind, where the people we meet may not be people at all, but reflections of the many selves we carry within. In almost every dream, you're not alone. There are faces moving around you, some familiar, some entirely new. They talk, argue, comfort, confuse, sometimes even defy you. They act as though they have minds of their own. And while you may wake and laugh at how unreal it all was in the dream itself, they are alive. They look back when you speak. They answer. They remember things you don't. There's a moment in certain lucid dreams when you realize something extraordinary. The people around you are, in a sense, you. Each expression, each voice, each gesture is a spark from your own imagination. Fragments of the same consciousness wearing different masks. And yet, as you watch them move, they can surprise you. They can say things you didn't expect or challenge you in ways that feel impossibly real. How can a part of your mind behave like something separate from you? To explain it in simple terms, imagine your mind as a great theatre. Every night the curtain rises and the stage fills with actors, the kind that change costumes faster than thought. You're the lead role, yes, but you're also the playwright, the lighting crew, the audience, and the ghost-whispering lines from behind the curtain. Most nights, you forget this. The play simply unfolds. But once in a while, lucidity grants you a seat in the balcony, and you see it all happening at once. Dream characters are the cast of this theatre. They are built from memories and emotions, from flickers of imagination and traces of the people you've met. Sometimes they are kind, sometimes they are cruel, but always they serve a purpose. They carry conversations the waking mind cannot yet finish. They represent feelings that haven't yet found words. They give form to every part of you that longs to speak. The psychologist Deirdre Barrett once worked with people whose minds contained many selves, individuals living with dissociative identity disorder. She found something remarkable. Their separate identities sometimes shared the same dream. One self would appear as the observer, another as the participant, and still another as a character in the story. Each seemed to play a role on the same inner stage. Even in sleep, the mind's multiple voices found ways to talk to one another. It was as though the dream was a meeting place, a secret council within the self. This idea is haunting and beautiful all at once, that the mind is not one voice but a choir. When you dream, that choir sings. The melody might be harmonious or dissonant, but each part adds something essential. What you call I during the day might just be the conductor, the one keeping time. The others, hidden during waking hours, find their freedom in sleep. The artist Dave Green once described meeting dream characters so vivid they seemed independent. He began painting them, portraits of the people he met only in his dreams. In one lucid episode, he asked a character if he could paint her likeness when he woke. She smiled and refused. "I'm from Czechoslovakia," she said, as though that explained everything, and walked away. When Green woke, he laughed, but also felt a twinge of awe. The dream had made a decision without him. Stories like that hint at something profound. Perhaps our dream companions are not simply puppets, but expressions of intelligence we don't fully command, aspects of ourselves that operate below awareness, with their own knowledge and emotions. The mind is vast, and we usually hear only the part that speaks in daylight. In sleep, the rest of it begins to talk. If you've ever woken from a dream conversation feeling changed, comforted, or somehow understood, you know this truth intuitively. The dialogue might not have made sense in words, but it reached you through feeling. Maybe someone forgave you in a dream, or warned you, or reminded you of kindness you'd forgotten. That was no ghost. That was you, a different you, one who speaks in symbols instead of speech. Dreams allow these inner selves to meet, not in argument, but in art. The conversations that unfold are improvisations, rehearsals, emotional negotiations. The dream gives each voice space to breathe, and sometimes lucidity lets you join the discussion knowingly, to ask questions, to listen, to reconcile. It's tempting to see the dream as chaos, random neurons firing, but look closer and you'll notice that even chaos has patterns. The people who appear most often are not accidents. They are archetypes: the guide, the child, the shadow, the companion. They are the shapes that carry your deepest feelings. The guide may offer wisdom you didn't know you possessed. The shadow may frighten you, but it holds truths you've tried to ignore. The child may ask questions no adult could bear to face. Each carries a part of your story. You could think of it as a family that meets every night at an old, dimly lit table. You don't always attend, but the conversation goes on regardless. Sometimes they argue, sometimes they plan, sometimes they sit in silence, waiting for you to listen. The dream is that table, the place where all versions of you come together to remember they belong to the same house. And so, when you wake from a dream filled with strangers who felt familiar, don't dismiss them too quickly. They are not random visitors, they are the echoes of you. The dream, in its quiet genius, uses them to keep the soul whole. There's also a strange compassion in this idea. If the people who challenge you in dreams are parts of yourself, then perhaps compassion toward them, even the frightening ones, becomes compassion toward yourself. To face a nightmare figure and say, "I see you," is to acknowledge a hidden fear, to integrate it rather than exile it. Every time you do, the dream grows calmer, and so do you. Lucid dreamers often describe this as healing. They stop running from monsters and start talking to them. They ask, "What do you want me to know?" Sometimes the answer comes as a word. Sometimes it comes as silence. Either way, it's a form of reconciliation, one consciousness meeting another within the same mind. When you think about it, that's what dreaming itself may be, the nightly practice of becoming whole again, the fragmented self gathering its pieces in the dark, reminding itself that even its contradictions belong together. From here, our journey floats toward an even more curious space, one where dreaming becomes not only a mirror but a playground, a place to test skill, to learn, to transform. The theatre expands, the cavity dissolves, and awareness begins to move as freely as light. There are dreams where the world suddenly feels weightless. Not only your body, but the limits that usually hold you. You might leap and never come down. You might sing and find the air itself responding. You might stretch out a hand and feel the space around you bend, not like air but like water, moving with your thought. It's in those moments that you realize something extraordinary. Within the dream, there are no rules except belief. Lucid dreamers often describe this feeling as stepping into zero gravity. You're not just floating, you're free from the invisible pull of expectation. You can walk through walls not because you've mastered a trick, but because the mind itself has stopped insisting that walls must be solid. It's not about control, really. It's about curiosity, seeing what happens when imagination is given the freedom of physics unbound. Some people use that freedom to explore pure wonder, to fly above glowing cities or swim through the stars. Others discover that this dream state can become something even more practical, a training ground for the body and mind. Scientists who study these lucid states have found that when dreamers perform actions, like playing an instrument or practicing a sequence of movements, the same parts of the brain activate as when they do those things awake. It's as if the body sleeps while the nervous system keeps practicing quietly in the dark. Think of an athlete rehearsing a perfect dive. In waking life, there's gravity, muscle strain, the risk of failure. But in the dream, there's only the motion, weightless, precise, repeatable. A gymnast might turn mid-air, correcting form without fear of falling. A pianist might hear each note perfectly, fingers moving through sound instead of keys. When morning comes, those neural pathways are slightly stronger, a little more familiar. The dream has become a classroom without walls. Even if you're not an athlete or musician, you've probably felt this in gentler ways. You dream of giving a speech you've been dreading, and when you wake, it feels less frightening. You dream of a difficult conversation, and the next day the words come easier. The mind uses sleep as rehearsal, not to predict, but to prepare. And in lucid dreams, that preparation becomes conscious. You're both the teacher and the student, shaping your own lessons in real time. Some traditions recognize this centuries before modern science. In Tibetan Buddhist practice, there's something called dream yoga, a spiritual training that treats the dream as a sacred space for awareness. Practitioners learn to maintain consciousness through all states, waking, dreaming, even dying, as a way to understand the nature of reality itself. In dream yoga, lucidity isn't about control, it's about liberation. If you can stay aware in the fluid world of dreams, you begin to see that waking life too is fluid, that reality is more flexible than it appears. A Tibetan teacher once described it like this: to awaken in the dream is to practice awakening in life. The dream becomes a mirror where you can test not just skills, but states of being. You can practice kindness, forgiveness, courage, qualities that feel just as real in sleep as in wakefulness. You can face someone you fear and speak gently, or become light itself and dissolve into the landscape, remembering what it feels like to belong to everything. This might sound otherworldly, but it's simply another way of describing the mind's natural ability to learn through imagination. We rehearse life in countless forms, through thought, through fantasy, through memory. Lucid dreaming is the most immersive version of that rehearsal, a place where ideas can be experienced, not just imagined. And in that sense, the dream's zero gravity isn't just about floating or flying. It's about releasing the heaviness of limits. When you realize that a wall can melt away at a glance, you begin to sense that many of your waking walls, fear, hesitation, doubt, might be just as soft. A lucid dream is a safe space to rediscover flexibility, to remind yourself that you're not as fixed as you sometimes feel. People who practice lucidity often describe a calm that lingers long after they wake. It's not adrenaline or excitement, it's the memory of possibility. Once you've felt freedom from the body's weight, you can carry a lighter spirit into the day. Once you've shaped the dream consciously, waking life feels less like something that happens to you and more like something you can participate in, gently, creatively, deliberately. There are also lucid dreamers who use these states for healing. Someone recovering from trauma might revisit a memory in a dream, viewing it not as victim but as witness, adding compassion where pain once lived. Others practice physical therapy within the dream, visualizing the movement of limbs that can no longer move in life, keeping the connection alive between intention and possibility. In that way, the dream becomes a bridge between past and future, body and mind, limitation and growth. But even within all this wonder, lucidity remains delicate. The awareness can vanish in an instant. You can be flying one moment and forget you're dreaming the next. The light flickers, the walls return, gravity reasserts itself. And that's all right. The goal isn't to stay lucid forever. The goal is to learn that awareness itself is fluid, that it can come and go and still leave understanding behind. You could think of lucid dreaming as a rehearsal for presence. Each time you notice that you're dreaming, you're practicing noticing at all. You're strengthening the part of yourself that observes without judgment, the quiet witness that watches thought and emotion flow like clouds across the sky. That skill, awareness without grasping, is the same one that steadies us in waking life. So if you ever find yourself aware inside a dream, don't rush to take flight or bend the world. Just pause, breathe, look around. Notice how the light behaves, how the air feels, how your own mind paints the scene in real time. That act of noticing, of being quietly conscious within the infinite, is perhaps the truest practice of all. From here, our journey turns once more, from personal exploration toward collective creation. If individuals can plant seeds in their dreams, what happens when humanity begins to do so intentionally? How far should we go in shaping the landscapes of sleep? The path now carries us toward the art and the ethics of dream incubation. Long before laboratories and sleep sensors, people tried to speak with their dreams. They believed that the world of sleep was not a separate realm, but a doorway, one that could be entered with care, intention, and a little faith. In ancient Greece, there were stone temples where the sick and the worried came to rest beneath open ceilings and painted stars. These were the temples of Asclepius, the god of healing. People would bathe, fast, whisper prayers, and then lie down upon sacred beds, hoping to receive a dream that would show them what needed to be cured. They called it incubation, a word that meant to rest upon, or to brood. And just like a bird warming its eggs, they believed that something precious could grow in that stillness. The dream was not random. It was guidance. If you prepared your mind properly, what you needed to know would find you. The idea has never truly vanished. You can still see its echo in small rituals we keep without realizing it. The quiet way you think about something just before sleep, the way you replay a question in your mind as if hoping the night will answer. Even the simple act of saying to yourself, "I hope I dream about this tonight," is a form of incubation. You're planting a seed in the soil of the mind, and as you drift into sleep, that seed is carried downward into deeper layers where it may take root. Modern science has found that this old intuition wasn't wrong. What we dwell on before sleep really does shape what we dream. When you focus on an image or emotion as you fall asleep, a face, a place, a wish, your brain keeps that pattern active, gently weaving it into the next state of consciousness. It's not magic, it's memory blending with imagination. But it feels like magic all the same. There are quiet techniques to guide this process, though they work best when used softly, not as commands. Some people keep a notebook by their bed, writing down a question before sleep. Others place an object nearby, a photo, a keepsake, a book, as if to give the mind something tangible to hold on to. The purpose isn't to force the dream, but to invite it. The mind responds better to openness than to demand. Imagine your consciousness as a lake at dusk. The ripples of thought begin to slow and the surface smooths. Just before you fall asleep, you drop a single pebble into the water. A thought, a feeling, a question. You don't control where the ripples go. You simply watch them expand and trust that somewhere in that stillness, they'll find what they need. People have used this simple practice in countless ways, to solve creative problems, to seek emotional clarity, or to reconnect with someone they miss. A painter might picture a blank canvas and whisper, "Show me what to fill it with." A student might review a concept and ask for understanding. Someone grieving might simply hold a memory in mind and say, "Let me see them once more." The dream does not always answer directly, but it often answers kindly. When dreams do respond, they tend to speak in symbols. A question about health may appear as an image of water flowing clearly or clouded. A question about love might come as a bridge, a path, a bird in flight. These symbols aren't riddles to decode. They are emotional metaphors, the language of the subconscious. What matters is not the exact picture, but the feeling it leaves behind. There's a gentle wisdom in how the mind handles these planted thoughts. It doesn't give linear answers because life rarely has them. Instead, it gives you metaphors, sensations, fragments of clarity. You wake not with a sentence, but with a sense of knowing. Subtle, like the way morning light feels different after rain. Dream incubation has reappeared in modern psychology too. Therapists sometimes teach people with recurring nightmares to change the ending before sleep, to imagine safety instead of fear. Over time, the brain learns the new pattern and rewrites the dream accordingly. It's the same principle. Intention becomes a seed, planted in the soil of sleep. And then there's creativity. Writers, inventors, scientists, all have turned to dreams for inspiration. They may not kneel in stone temples anymore, but the ritual remains. Before bed, they ask, they wonder, they prepare the ground. The dream in its own time delivers. When you think of it, the process is as natural as breathing. Every night your mind sorts through the day. What mattered, what lingered, what hurt, what healed. It's always incubating something. The only difference is whether you join in consciously. By setting an intention, you're not commanding the dream. You're collaborating with it. You're saying, I trust you to show me something worth knowing. If you try this yourself, keep it gentle. Don't chase the dream. Approach it the way you would approach a shy animal, quietly, kindly, without sudden movement. Write down your thought. Whisper it if you like, then let it go. The moment of surrender is what allows the mind to work freely. And if no answer comes, that's an answer too. The soil of the mind sometimes needs to rest. Not every seed sprouts overnight. But when it does, when the dream blooms into an image or idea that feels alive, you'll recognize it instantly. You'll wake with a pulse of meaning, as though something inside you has whispered back. You could say dream incubation is humanity's oldest conversation with the unconscious, the dialogue between question and mystery. From ancient temples to modern bedrooms, it has always been the same act, trusting the dark to bring forth light. And as we follow this thread deeper, the pattern begins to widen. What if dreams can not only answer our questions, but shape our inventions, our music, our breakthroughs? What if the dream itself is a creative partner, a committee that never sleeps, working on our behalf in the quiet hours of night? When you close your eyes each night, you might imagine that your thoughts scatter and dissolve, drifting into nothing. But inside your sleeping mind, there is still activity, not chaos, not noise, but something quietly organized. It's as though a group of invisible workers begin to gather around a great wooden table, illuminated by the soft light of memory. They speak in symbols, not sentences. They draw connections you would never notice while awake. Psychologist Deirdre Barrett once gave this hidden team a name, the Committee of Sleep. It's a gentle metaphor, but an accurate one. While you rest, your brain continues to process unfinished business. Questions you've asked, problems you've faced, ideas you've only half-shaped. It takes them apart, rearranges them, and tests how they might fit together differently. Every night, this committee convenes, part scientist, part artist, part poet, and holds quiet meetings on your behalf. History's full of stories about their work. Auguste Kekulé, a 19th century chemist, had been struggling for years to understand the structure of the benzene molecule. One night he dreamt of a snake biting its own tail, a circle devouring itself. When he awoke, he realized the image held his answer. Benzene's atoms were arranged in a ring. The discovery changed chemistry forever. Kekulé later joked that he learned to respect his dreams, But there was truth in that humour. The committee had done its job. In another story, the physician Otto Louis dreamed of an experiment that could prove how nerves communicate, through chemicals, not electricity. He woke at dawn, scribbled notes in the dark, and fell back asleep. By morning, the notes made no sense. Frustrated, he went about his day, and that night, the dream returned. This time, he leapt from bed and performed the experiment exactly as he'd seen it. The result confirmed his dream's message. That discovery earned him a Nobel Prize, and humanity gained a deeper understanding of how our bodies speak to themselves. Even music, perhaps the most dreamlike of all arts, owes some of its masterpieces to this nocturnal counsel. Paul McCartney once said that the melody for Yesterday came to him fully formed in a dream. He woke with a tune in his head, sat at a piano, and played it to make sure it was real. It was. He had simply borrowed it from the quiet, creative rhythm of sleep. These stories might sound mythical, but they reveal something deeply human: the mind's power to keep working long after we think we've stopped. When you struggle with a problem during the day, your conscious mind often tries to force a solution. It analyzes, calculates, loops endlessly. But when you finally surrender to sleep, the deeper mind, intuitive, associative, patient, takes over. It explores possibilities your waking self would never consider. The committee doesn't rush. It doesn't care about deadlines. It cares only about connection. The science behind it is simple but elegant. During dreaming, particularly in the vivid stage known as REM, the brain's emotional and creative centers stay active while the logical filters quiet down. It's as if the committee is granted full access to the archives. It can mix ideas freely, pair distant memories, fuse unrelated thoughts into new patterns. Most of these combinations fade by morning, like sketches left on the chalkboard, but sometimes the right idea sticks. You wake with a thought that feels both strange and perfect, like a key that fits a lock you didn't know existed. You don't have to be a scientist or artist to experience this. The committee of sleep works for everyone. You might fall asleep thinking about a difficult choice and wake with clarity. You might struggle to phrase something, then find the exact words waiting in your mind the next day. Even the smallest insight, a fresh way of seeing, a moment of relief, is evidence of the mind's nocturnal teamwork. You could say the committee's secret strength lies in humility. It listens more than it speaks. It doesn't argue with itself. It lets thoughts drift, combine, dissolve, reform. It trusts in process over pressure. There's a lesson there for waking life too. Sometimes clarity comes not from effort, but from release. If you want to collaborate with your own committee, you can. The method is simple, though it requires a touch of patience. Before sleep, pose a gentle question. Not a demand, not a riddle, just a quiet wondering. What would help me move forward? How can I better understand this? What am I not seeing? Write it down if you wish, then let it rest. Don't force yourself to dream of it. Simply allow the night to work. When you wake, take a moment before rushing into the day. Write down whatever lingers, a thought, an image, a word. It may not make sense immediately, but if you treat it kindly, the meaning often emerges slow and sure as dawn. In a way, the committee of sleep is one of evolution's oldest gifts. It allowed early humans to simulate danger safely, to imagine tools before they built them, to test the future before risking it. And in us, it has become the birthplace of creativity, that mysterious ability to combine reason and emotion, logic and intuition. Dreaming is not the opposite of thinking. It is thinking in a different language. When you realize that, your own nights begin to feel different. Sleep stops being just rest and becomes participation, a quiet continuation of the day's inquiry. Each dream becomes a note passed between your waking self and your deeper one. Some are poetic, some practical, some absurd, but all are signed by the same hand. And perhaps On some nights, when your mind feels full and tired, you can smile and think, "It's all right. The committee will take it from here." They'll sit around their silent table, shuffling the pieces of your thoughts, testing what fits, and when morning comes, one of them will quietly slip a solution onto your pillow. From here, our exploration turns to a question both thrilling and uneasy. If we can collaborate with our dreams, could others do it too? What happens when the whispers of intention become technology, when we begin to engineer the landscape of sleep itself? If you close your eyes tonight and someone whispers your name just as you begin to dream, would your mind hear it? Would it fold that sound into the landscape of your sleep, weaving it into the story without you ever waking? The question isn't entirely poetic. It's one modern science is quietly beginning to ask. In recent years, researchers have tried to take dream incubation a step further, not just planting thoughts in the garden of sleep, but tending them with machines. It sounds almost like a myth written in reverse. Instead of people praying to the gods of dreams, the scientists have become the ones calling into the darkness, trying to speak with what sleeps inside us. At the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a small device called Dormio has been developed for this purpose. Imagine something no larger than a glove resting lightly on your hand as you drift into sleep. It listens, not to your words, but to your breathing, your heartbeat, the tiny shifts in your muscles. When it senses that you're entering the first fragile stage of dreaming, it plays a few gentle words through your headphones. Remember the tree, it might say, or think of the ocean. These cues are not commands, they are nudges. They arrive at the edge of wakefulness where the mind is still half open, and they can gently steer the first images of a dream. In experiments, people asked to think about trees often reported dreaming of forests, roots, leaves, even entire worlds built from wood and wind. It's as if the mind, like a sculptor given a single word, takes that word and builds a universe around it. To describe it scientifically, you might say this happens in the hypnagogic state, the borderland between waking and dreaming, where thoughts become fluid and malleable. But to describe it simply, it's the place where imagination is closest to the surface, where one whisper can change the shape of the sea. The researchers who work in this field call it targeted dream engineering, but even they speak about it with care as though aware of its delicate power. When they play a sound, a word, or a scent into the dreaming mind, they aren't just influencing an image, they're touching the architecture of emotion and memory. The dreamer might not remember the prompt, but its echo can linger, like the scent of rain carried through a window long after the storm has passed. The potential is astonishing. Some scientists have used these methods to help people confront phobias or habits. In one experiment, participants who wanted to quit smoking were exposed to the smell of cigarettes paired with the scent of something unpleasant, something faintly rotten. The next morning, their desire to smoke was lower. The brain had drawn its own association during sleep. It's subtle conditioning, but effective. And it raises profound questions. Because if we can shape our own dreams for healing or creativity, what happens when others try to do the same? Advertising already reaches us while we scroll, drive, and work. What if one day it reaches us while we dream? Who would we be if even our private nights could be scripted? For now, such scenarios remain distant, but they are close enough to imagine, and imagination, as we've seen, is the first step toward reality. The challenge is not only technological, but ethical. The mind in sleep is porous, trusting. It listens without resistance. That vulnerability deserves protection. You could think of the dreaming mind as a child curled up by a fire. It absorbs everything softly. Stories, tones, emotions. Speak kindly to it, and it will bloom. Speak harshly, and it will carry the echo for days. Dream engineering, if it is to exist, must learn the same kindness. Some ethicists have already called for guidelines, a sort of sleep charter that would prevent commercial or political use of dream influence. Others argue that the best protection is awareness. The more we understand how our minds can be shaped, the better we can choose how to shape them. In a way, the technology itself is forcing humanity to become more conscious of consciousness, to recognise that even our most private landscapes are precious. Still, not all dream engineering is sinister or sterile. Some artists have used it as a form of exploration. They wear sensors, record fragments of their dreams, and create art from them. Visual diaries of the sleeping mind. Others use guided hypnagogic prompts to spark creative imagery, much like surrealist painters once did through chance and intuition. In these hands, dream technology becomes less about control and more about conversation. It's not a scientist dictating what to dream, but a gentle collaboration between body, machine, and imagination. Perhaps that's how all technology should behave, as a partner in curiosity, not a master of thought. The best inventions don't replace the mind. They help us listen to it more closely. The same could be true of dream engineering if handled with respect. The goal is not to rewrite the dream, but to illuminate it. And yet, even the gentlest of tools carries risk. Once you know a door exists, someone will always want to knock. The key lies in remembering that the dreaming mind is not a blank screen. It is a living forest. You can plant seeds there, but you must tread lightly, for every root connects to something deeper. So if you ever find yourself tempted to control your dreams too precisely, to script them, edit them, polish them into perfection, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what might I lose if the dream stops surprising me? The beauty of dreaming is not that it obeys us, but that it reveals us. Every night your consciousness dissolves and reforms, wandering through landscapes no algorithm could predict. That mystery, that wildness, is part of what keeps us human. We may learn to whisper to our dreams, but perhaps we should never shout. From here, our journey carries us toward the end. Not the end of dreaming, but the understanding that dreaming is consciousness, just wearing a softer light. As we drift into the final reflection, we'll see how this nightly act of imagination may hold the deepest secret of all. That awareness never truly disappears. It only changes its form. Every night, you disappear. Not forever, just for a while. You lie down, close your eyes, and gradually the edges of your awareness begin to blur. The room fades. The sound of your own breathing becomes oceanic. Thought slows until it no longer feels like thinking, just drifting. And then, without ceremony, you're gone, into the inner darkness of sleep. Yet even there, something luminous remains. The light of consciousness does not go out. It only softens. For centuries, people believed that sleep was the absence of awareness, a nightly extinction of the self. But modern science has shown otherwise. Even in the deeper stages of sleep, the brain hums with intricate rhythm, tiny pulses of activity rising and falling like bioluminescent waves beneath a dark sea. And within those waves there are flickers, brief bright signatures of consciousness that never truly vanish. One way to think of it is through light. When you wake, your mind blazes. Thought, identity, emotion, all glowing in sharp definition. When you dream, that same light is diffused, scattered into colour and story. And when you sink into deep sleep, it becomes a single ember, faint but steady, waiting for dawn. Consciousness doesn't die each night. It changes shape, changing from flame to coal to spark, until it rises again with morning. Some neuroscientists describe this using what they call integrated information, the idea that consciousness arises wherever information is richly connected. When the mind is awake, those connections form vast networks. During sleep, the networks contract but never break. You might imagine it as a constellation of stars dimming at night, but still linked by invisible lines. The pattern remains. even when the brightness fades. But words like information and network can feel too cold for what this really means. It's more like this. Awareness is the thread that never snaps. Whether you're awake, dreaming, or deep in dreamless sleep, you're still being woven. Each state a different texture in the same fabric. The self you call I is not a fixed point. It's the pattern that appears as the thread moves. Dreaming reveals this beautifully. When you're inside a dream, your sense of identity shifts easily. You might be yourself, or someone else, or no one at all. You might change age, shape, gender, even species without surprise. The dream accepts it all, and yet, through every transformation, a quiet observer remains. The part of you that knows this is happening to me. That, too, is consciousness, the silent witness behind every mask. When you wake, the masks fall away, and you return to your ordinary name, your life, your story. But what if those daytime boundaries are just another layer of the dream? What if awareness itself, not the stories it tells, is what's real? You can glimpse this in moments of lucidity, not only in dreams but in waking life. When you suddenly notice yourself thinking, or catch yourself reacting, or step back just enough to see your own mind at work, that's a spark of the same awareness that watches in dreams. It's the same I that travels through every state, the same light reflecting through different windows. This idea is as old as philosophy. Eastern traditions have long described waking and dreaming as two sides of the same mirror, both reflecting the play of consciousness. Western thinkers too have wondered if life itself might be a kind of dream, not unreal but woven from perception. The physicist Erwin Schrödinger once wrote, "The total number of minds in the universe is one." Whether he meant it literally or poetically hardly matters. The point is that awareness may be more continuous than it appears, flowing through everything like a single current. Science now gives us gentle hints of this continuity. When researchers study the dreaming brain, they see patterns of activation similar to those of imagination and daydreaming while awake. The same regions that conjure fictional worlds in creativity also generate the landscapes of sleep. It's as though consciousness never really stops. It just switches canvases. By night it paints in metaphor, by day in matter. To dream, then, is not to escape reality. It's to explore it from another angle. Dreams remind us that perception itself is flexible, that identity is fluid, that imagination and existence are not enemies but collaborators. In that way, dreaming teaches us to see waking life more gently, to question what we take for granted, to realize that the world we move through each day is also, in a sense, a shared dream, shaped by what we notice, what we believe, and what we dare to imagine. When you look closely, you'll find the same rhythms linking sleep and wakefulness, the cycles of forgetting and remembering, of darkness and illumination. Even the act of closing your eyes during meditation, or in a quiet moment of thought, echoes the nightly ritual of surrender. We let go, we dissolve, we reform. Each breath is a small version of that cycle, awareness expanding and returning, waking and dreaming, birth and rest. So perhaps consciousness isn't something that appears and disappears, but something that breathes. It expands when we engage with the world, contracts when we rest, and expands again. The dream is one inhale, waking life the next exhale, and between the two lies a still point, that silent awareness that simply is. If you can feel that continuity, even for a moment, then you've already glimpsed what it means to dream the self awake. It doesn't mean staying conscious all night or mastering lucidity. It means recognizing that you've never really stopped being conscious, only shifted how you express it. The mind does not sleep. It only changes its rhythm. When morning comes and sunlight touches your eyelids, it's tempting to think you're returning to reality. But in truth, You're continuing a journey. The dream changes form, that's all. The world you wake into is another field of awareness, more stable perhaps, but just as mysterious. And so we drift back from that inner ocean, carrying the salt of it still in our hair. The dreaming mind murmurs quietly beneath the surface, even as the day begins. Somewhere within you, it keeps humming, the eternal witness, the gentle fire that never goes out. Sleep and wake, light and dark, thought and silence, all parts of one consciousness learning to know itself. If you listen closely, you can feel it even now, that faint pulse behind your thoughts, the echo of the dream still glowing in the corners of your mind. You're both the dreamer and the dream, both the question and the answer, both the spark and the flame. And as you rest tonight, remember, you never truly leave yourself when you sleep. You simply return to the quieter version of who you've always been. A flicker of awareness adrift in the vast dreaming cosmos, learning through each breath to awaken again.